Hello and good morning here out in the West Coast and whatever time zone you are in. Welcome to the last day of hashtag Art Project 2020. This is our first, hopefully, of many of these expos, but I can't wait to hear where this all goes. So I'm Natalia Lebedinskaya. I'm the program director here at the Vancouver Biennale, and I really want to thank Jessica Angel for putting this event on with us and for curating these amazing series of talks and presentations and conversations. And of course, to the entire team at the Vancouver Biennale for doing this in this smooth as silk way that continues to amaze us all here. So it's a big shout out to everyone who's making this possible right now. As with the previous days, I want to kick this off with a brief land acknowledgement, as is the customary thing to do out here in Canada, and I think is generally a good habit. So we are gathered here today on the territories of many nations across Canada, Turtle Island, and beyond. Here, the Biennale team is on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I think today, especially with the lineup of the talks that we have, it really brings into focus the need for diversity of voices and for undoing the damage of colonial systems and undoing the damage of the patriarchal systems. That, of course, all of that is intricately connected. And I hope everyone tunes in into the first and the last talk, starting off with women in the arts and blockchain movement. And our last talk today is by 4 labs out of Emily Carr University with a number of Indigenous artists who are really diving into the possibilities of XR. So without further ado, kicking off the conversation between these 3 powerhouse women leading the art and blockchain movement. So over to you, Kate.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Vancouver Biennale, and thank you, Art Project Jessica Angel, who has brought us together and allowed this opportunity to speak today. I would like to briefly introduce you our agenda today. We in her station here with myself. My name is Kate. From Kate Vass Gallery, which curates and exhibits art in both traditional and tokenized art spaces. We have Sarah Zucker, is a visual artist and writer. We have Angie Taylor, is a VR artist, sculptor, animator, and creative technologist. They will have an opportunity, and they prepared beautiful slides that they can talk about their practices themselves and give a little bit more information about their art. And today in the conversation, we have prepared a couple of questions, each brings to the group, and we can discuss various topics in relation to gender diversity, artistic identity, and anything else if we have any other additional questions from the space. I would like to open up with the slides if we can get some assistance here. That maybe Sarah can start first to introduce yourself. Oh, sorry. Let's start with Sarah.
All right. Hi, my name is Sarah Zucker. I'm a writer and artist based in Los Angeles, California. You can see here some of my lovely self-expression. My work is very much interdisciplinary. I really, in the past 5 years, I've leaned into mixing cutting edge and obsolete technologies, specifically specializing in the embrace and flagrant use of VHS, which does seem a little nutty in 2020, and I think that's why I like it. It's very important to me that my work exists sort of in its own dimension, and I purposefully intervene with the same tools we all use. I'm also someone who's using Creative Suite and 3D and all these things, but I guess why I like the use of obsolete technology so much is that it's a very purposeful aesthetic intervention that takes you out of time and gives us sort of this different look at where we are right now. I think that pretty much sums it up. I could talk at length, but I'll let the work speak for itself.
Thank you, Sarah. We don't have so much time, so
yeah.
we can refer maybe to your work, which we have tokenized here on Ephemera.
Yes, this is my piece, Three Graces, created this year in my studio. This is a single edition NFT that was minted for our show, a celebration of the woman. This piece has a lot of deep meaning for me. Check me out on Scent. I just wrote a piece about it. If you want to know more about where it comes from, I thought it would be a really good fit for this show, as you know, the Three Graces are obviously a trope from antiquity, from the ancient Greeks, who, for as much as I admire them, they sort of, were the original misogynists in many ways. So I wanted to have fun with, as I often do, with taking something we can all recognize that's sort of from the height of patriarchy and repurpose it and reappropriate it in my own way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Angie, maybe we can move to your slide and hear more about you.
Yeah, my name's Angie Taylor. I originally studied sculpture and drawing back in the 1980s and did wood carving and steel construction at the time. Then became a prop maker and got into digital media arts through dropping off props at the BBC one day and seeing people using the first version of Photoshop, and I completely fell for it. And since then, I became an illustrator and a motion graphic designer. Also was an Adobe demo artist during the 90s, touring with Adobe at trade shows and conferences. And then I had a knee operation, gave all of that up, and started doing training for people. And then when COVID hit, I decided I've always wanted to get back into doing my art because I kind of got sidetracked into design. Always was trained as a fine artist, so I wanted to get back into it. So now I got an artist residency at a place called Fusebox in Brighton, and that started me off on the path of VR and XR. So now I'm making VR projects, digital sculptures and paintings and animation. And my work I was really into the punk scene back in the 1970s and 80s. I'm quite old. So my work's still very heavily influenced by that, and it just juxtaposes a kind of DIY punk ethic with the fresh immediacy of naive art, which is an art style that I really love. But also intermingled with the complexity of 3D digital technology. And I explore challenges in my work of neurodiversity. I have Asperger's and ADHD, so that's a big part of who I am. And also my work often champions the misfits in society and gives them power and a voice to enable them to speak through my work, I think. That's what I attempt to do anyway.
Thank you, Angie. Very interesting. Well, I know that we have quite a limited time today, and I wish we have more, to talk about your practice. But there are certain angles which I wanted to touch today about the diversity and diversity in art and tech market. So I would raise the first question. Do you feel that the crypto art environment is more inclusive in comparison to traditional art world? I would raise it to both of you, of course.
I would say, unfortunately, not at the moment. I think what concerns me is I see the crypto art world kind of mimicking the established art world a little bit, whereas I was hoping it would kind of start to go in a new direction because of the technology and what that enables. I mean, I think people are slightly more aware of diversity issues, but it doesn't really seem to have made much difference in terms of the market.
But don't you see more crypto artists on the, presented on various platforms? I think in comparison to traditional art platforms, like traditional art auction platforms like Artsy or Artnet, we have seen quite many female artists, which was quite positive to me, and also many talented women who came into space and were considered as diamonds, like nobody were aware of them. And crypto space allowed us, to kind of meet new people. So you would still see that the situation is not really best.
It's not as it should be, considering women are 50% of the population, and women are, in my opinion, equally talented as men. I think it should be 50-50, and it's not. So until it's 50-50, I think there's still work to do.
Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think Angie's absolutely right. If we look at where we are right now, I think we can all agree that or maybe we can't, but I think I agree, at least with Angie, that I perceive that there are many ways in which the crypto art space is at the moment mirroring the traditional art world, in terms of gender diversity. However, I also think it's a complex problem. It's not something we can completely simplify. And I think there's a certain degree of self-selection too. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot because, I, for a long time, was a professional script reader. And we saw this issue with a script reading service I read for, that they, in an open platform, it was like 70% of everything was submitted by men. And they did a lot of research into this, and they found that, in the case of this open platform, which we could say crypto art is also an open platform, everyone is welcome to be involved, that they found it actually is related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, if you're not familiar, the Dunning-Kruger effect is the psychological effect where people who are of limited ability tend to be overconfident, and the more ability you have, especially if you're in the middle range, if you're not like Mozart, if you're in the middle range of ability, you become more and more realistic about where you are with your abilities. And they found in this script reading service that the Dunning-Kruger effect actually has a gendered component, which is that women are much, much, much more honest with themselves about their ability. Whereas men, because of social reasons, because of how men are socialized, they are socialized to fake it till they make it, to be overconfident and then eventually hope that they'll catch up. I mean, we can see that maybe perhaps in American politics of the moment, this unearned confidence. And I only offer that up because it's, as we've prepared for this panel, something I have been chewing on a lot, that it's something that is not native to crypto art itself. It's native to society as a whole, that we are not socializing women the same way we are socializing men. And that's, I think, part of this issue of why we literally just aren't seeing as many women involved, especially because of the crypto component. Women are not socialized to be as concerned with finance and investing. And these are fields that men are pushed into and women are discouraged from going into. So it's really, I think, as much to do with the crypto part of it as it is to do with the art part, and which is also to say technology as a whole. It's a technological endeavor, and we still in society tend to discourage women from entering technological fields. So I offer that up only because it's what I've really been chewing on. Of this is a multi-pronged approach. It's not as simple as saying, yes, we're seeing a lack of diversity and it's the fault of the patriarchy. It is, but what we call the patriarchy also includes women. We ourselves are part of it,
Absolutely. I mean, you only have to look at how people bring up their children differently to see why it happens. It's not the fault of any gender or any group of people. It's how we all are. And I think as women, we're as guilty of it as anyone else. But, if you look at how kids are brought up, boys are taught to not cry and get on with it and not feel sorry for themselves and be brave and all of that. Whereas women are kind of usually, I mean, this is a huge generalization, but generally women are taught to look after each other and look after people and be more empathetic and not worry about themselves so much. So I think that has a long-lasting impact. And even if you look at, if you're driving a car and you've got kids in the back and they need to go to the toilet, you'll drive as far as you can to get to a bathroom for the girl to go to the toilet. But if you've got a boy, you'll let him just go out and pee on the side of the road. And even just that example really changes how the boy and the girl will behave in later life.
I absolutely agree. So would you think it's more kind of, in our culture is more a conspiracy of strength against weakness? Because men also struggle. I mean, actually the victim in this culture can be anyone. It can be man, it can be female or male, both. And women are allowed, let's say, to be unhappy and defeated because physically we are weaker, but men, they're struggling, so more kind of intelligent, gentle or sensitive men can be just as victimized as women as well, but we, in our culture, we don't allow them to defeat themselves. For them, the defeat is even more maybe painful, so it's maybe more a conspiracy of strength against weakness, rather than against women,
Yeah, but I think it is a gender imbalance, so it is to do with gender. It's not like every, in brackets, strong person has a better life than, in brackets, every weak person. That's not the case. It's you can definitely see the pattern in terms of gender, though, and it depends on what you define as being strong and weak. I don't define women as being weaker than men, for example. I just see men and women equally having strengths and weaknesses, but it is a patriarchy. Like, men are the kind of dominant group in society. White men are.
Right. And we could have my God, we could spend like a week talking about just this. And to speak to what you're saying, Kate, I think it's also important, to acknowledge, at least I'm not a gender essentialist. When I speak of women, if you identify as a woman, you are a woman. I'm non-binary. I'm a woman and I'm non-binary. So there's the whole, even when we start talking about these notions of gender, those are particularities and granularities that, again, we could dedicate a whole conference to. So I know it's easy for us to get off topic from crypto art itself, because I guess that's when you bring these things up, they are inherently activating. They're inherently questions that we go, this affects so many of the many different compartments of my life that I could write 10 novels about this concept alone of gender and gender policing and self-gender policing, and how it affects our livelihood, how it affects how we express ourselves and how we, finance our lives and how we value our own work.
Definitely, there are many issues, but to come back to our topic of crypto space, does crypto space give equal opportunities, or do you think something is still missing?
I think there are equal opportunities, but it's also to do with confidence. And what I noticed a lot was the women in the space weren't talking with confidence. They weren't promoting their own work. And it's not about policing that. It's more about just encouraging. I don't have any problem with men at all. All I have a problem with is seeing women not represented or not having the confidence to promote themselves as much as I think they should. So when I did the She Art exhibition, all I wanted to do was just give them a leg up and say, look, you're really great. Get out there and talk about it. And actually, when they do, they start to kind of compete more on an even keel. And a lot of them sold work that they hadn't sold for a long time before. So it's more about encouraging the women than dissing the men. I have got no problem with men at all, but I just think to redress the balance, we need to kind of work more on getting more women involved, getting more people of color involved, and giving them a little bit of extra help to even out the playing field. That's all I'm interested in.
Absolutely.
Angie, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Angie. And I think that's why the work you're doing, the work women of crypto art are doing, I think that's why it's so essential. And I've seen debate around this. Whenever inevitably one of the women artists brings it up, just like a helpful little, not even like a criticism, just when people notice, oh, you know, if you look at the top 20 earners on Super Rare, they are predominantly male, and people always go, oh, but Hackatow, one of them is a woman, and we all kind of have the same response of, that's great for them. You can't point to an outlier and use that as your counter argument for a trend.
And also notice they've got an ambiguous name. They're not obviously a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
And to make it brief, I think what you're saying is exactly the way forward. And to answer your earlier question, Kate, what is exciting about crypto art as compared to the traditional art world is that we have the potential to make it whatever we want to be. It is completely open for our definition right now, which is why I think some people, some of us, all of us are able to get disheartened sometimes when you go, oh man, we're just doing that shitty thing, aren't we? Like, we're just totally perpetrating this exact same thing where we acknowledge, we reward, we celebrate men when they are confident, when they say, this is what my work is worth. And in so many subconscious ways, all of us discourage women from doing that. If you have the audacity to be a confident woman on the internet, I mean, God love you. Like, I know how that, you are putting yourself out there for people to just take shots at you. Not that the men, again, I love men too. Not that they don't get shots taken at them, but for them, it fires them up. And I find with women, it's like when you get piled on, when people start coming for you, how dare you say your work is worth that much? That's why we so need the support of other women. We need the support of men who see what we are doing and who go, hey, no, she's great. This stuff she's doing is great. And she's allowed to have an opinion, for God's sake, you know?
And that's a great point, because there are so many men who are really supportive of all of this. In fact, most of the men in the space are, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's another good point, is that when we tried to get women involved in she art, a lot of them said no because they were scared. They didn't want to get involved in case they got trolled, or they didn't want to come out as being female. This is
a very interesting point, Angie, because this is something I wanted to reveal as well, as why we are only 3 of us today. You know, if you look at other panels, there are line standing people wanting to be on a panel about this topic and that topic, you know, and everybody is you know, not afraid to speak about their subjects, you know. But once I wanted to host a panel about gender diversity and about, you know, with female crypto artists, and I reached out to quite many of them. 90% were feeling not very comfortable of speaking, first of all, in public, and secondly, revealing their identity, even though they identify themselves as a woman, and also being scared to be attacked in this toxic social media environment. And that led me to think that actually, you know, Women Supporting Women project, which is non-commercial, to support also traditional female artists, not only crypto female artists or generative female artists, any medium, you know, just to empower them to not to be afraid. So I think, you know, we have similar goals, not to say that women are better than men, but to just, you know, to give them this strength and empowerment in order to speak up and be confident in what they're doing. And I really hope that everything what, you know, we try to initiate is going to help at least some of them. We have a question from the audience, and we're already 4 minutes over time, so maybe we should answer. So maybe we should answer the audience question. Let me see here. Question from, I'm wondering if we can talk about why so many women choose to be anonymous on the crypto space. Are we still hunted by the history Gamergate? Well, I think we partially answered that one. If you want to comment on the last point, are we still hunted by the history Gamergate?
I think so, because I think a lot of the collectors come from that world of gamers, And you can see that in the type of art that's being bought at the moment, a lot of 3D, a lot of what I call demo art almost. It's like what you see in 3D demos is being bought as art, which is absolutely fine, but it kind of indicates the mindset of the people that are buying. And I think because they're coming from a gaming background, the aesthetic they're looking for is very gaming related. Yeah. I don't want to take up too much time. So.
We have another one. I think Sarah maybe can answer the last question from audience. I guess one way we can put this is if the imbalance didn't exist, we would not have this panel. In other words, is there a man leading the art and tech movement panel?
Oh boy.
We'll organize one for you.
These, it's funny. So this question sort of ties
They're
into what
already leading it.
Right. What I said about inevitably when someone, and I've seen women artists raise this. I've also seen plenty of male artists raise this on Twitter where they just point out, wow, there's a huge gender imbalance when you look at it, when you just look at sales numbers. I know Super Rare and all the platforms, I know, I've spoken to them. They're doing their best to try to have an equal number, to have gender parity on their platforms. But you cannot tell people how to spend their money. You cannot. Collectors collect what they want to collect. And I am a firmly meritocratic person. I also collect. I collect what excites me. We didn't get into this whole question, but again, it could be its own panel. The question around how much does the artist's identity impact the value of their work, and that relates to what's happening here. This question of, I certainly would never advocate that one's work should be collected simply because one is a woman, or that collectors should somehow be forced to collect work that they don't want because they have. No one is saying that. No one is saying that. When these discussions get raised around gender parity and around furthering women artists, furthering people of color, furthering people of trans or non-binary experience, or just, of atypical experience, a marginal experience, no one is saying to you that, hey, you as person who is top of the pecking order, we're taking your thing away and it is false logic. What is happening here? This notion of men leading art and tech. We don't need that panel. You guys are already leading art and tech. All the panels are already about you. So
that's the other good point about that, Sarah, sorry, is sometimes men mistake rights for privilege. So they think their rights are being taken away when actually it's just privilege. Sorry.
And we're opening privilege up to everyone. No one is taking your privilege away, except for maybe the part that says you, just by virtue of who you are, get to be up above other people who are of different lived life experience. And look, if I put myself in their shoes, if you are someone who already feels you have a tenuous grasp on your privilege, again, this is what we've seen in American politics. It's what many of us are trying to wrap our heads around. You have to put yourself in that person's shoes. You can't view them with vitriol. So I love you, person who wrote this question. I understand you possibly were maybe just trying to troll us, but in doing so, you are actually offering us chef's kiss, the perfect example of why we are having this panel and why we all clearly are in agreement. No one has a problem with men here. No one has a problem with you all expressing yourselves freely. In fact, I wish for the world, I wish for all men to feel they could express themselves as freely as they can. Like Angie said, we discourage men from expressing emotions and sensitivity and empathy. We would be so much better if all men felt they could express sensitivity and empathy. Again, I could keep going on, but it's to say that us having this panel is in service of, like Angie said, there are so many women out there who are in this space but feel very tentative. Any of us who have lived this life and had to be a human woman of whatever variety on this earth knows that any endeavor we do, we have the task of doing the endeavor. Okay, so we make our art. That's the endeavor. And now I have this whole additional fucking task of now I have to make my art as a woman, and I'm going to be having all of this extra fucking work. Sorry
I
for
don't.
my
I don't
language.
want. I don't want to do these panels. I don't want to have to do
Right.
panels about women. I don't want to have Waka or She Art exhibitions, because it opens me up to more shit. I've had more shit from doing this than anything else I've ever done. So as soon as it becomes 50-50, we
Right.
won't have to do any of this
We'll all
anymore.
hold hands and sing
That's all we
Kumbaya
want.
and go, hooray!
As soon as it's
We did it.
50-50, no more women's panels, no more Waka, no more She Art.
No,
That's all we want, 50-50.
Girls, I want to say something very important. You know, probably it will smooth things a little bit. One of the reasons why I also initiated and will initiate, I'm not going to stop, you know, these talks and the exhibitions and everything. It doesn't matter how much shit, sorry, you know, we can receive from that. I'm not afraid. I just wonder that in one of the reasons also what I noticed is in this world and in the culture, there are many other women who actually bring additional competition, not only men. It's not only men who can be an obstacle, it's also your friend woman who can be an obstacle, you know. And many times, you know, there are other females, you know, who can damage a lot and be can hurt with a word, with a comment that, you know, can kind of close you up with the potential and your confidence and etc., etc. And this competition comes actually not even from male word, but from also other female. So, you know, it's a very complex subject. We've been allowed to have 10 minutes more, but I don't know if we can allow Brian. I don't know. Let's ask if we can have another 1 to 2 minutes just to comment on this. That other women also raise a lot of competition, not only men. And that's why my message here would be also to a women, to not to compete, but to unite in order to deliver better results, because we can learn from men one thing: they unite much better. You know, they support each other better. You know, the male friendship is something that books have written about. And what about female friendship and about female supporting one another? You know, this is something that we women also have to reflect on ourselves probably and learn from men. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Actually, Waka has really blown all of that out of the water, because I've never seen such a fantastic camaraderie amongst a group of women. There are 2 or 3 who are a bit kind of bitchy and sort of maybe competitive, but on the whole, nearly everyone has been supportive of each other, helping each other. You know, if anyone's going through anything, getting trolled or having any sort of negative experience, they've got a safe place to come and talk about it. And in terms of getting things done as well, it's incredible. Like, people have ideas and then it just gets done. There's no arguments, or there's very few arguments in terms of, you know, who's doing what, really. So I've had quite a good experience within Waka, but I do know what you mean, and I have experienced that from women as well, where there's a kind of competitiveness, or you feel that you should. I always feel like sometimes with some women that they don't want me to be confident; they want me to be quiet. So there's a kind of feeling of almost like, you know, you shouldn't be showing off, or you shouldn't be promoting yourself.
You feel intimidated, right?
Sorry?
You feel intimidated a
little bit, yeah, I do sometimes. Yeah.
There is a good point from the audience. If you can read, it's to Angie, actually, to your comment about the gaming-like behavior. Do you see the comments in our private chat, Angie?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you can...
I can't see the question.
Well, it's more about good point, Angie, to your comment about the gaming-like behavior, and there need to be more vocal female collectors to balance out the taste issue as well.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Collectors also collect what others are collecting, and they collect the artists at the top of the leaderboard. So women need to be more visible. Well, I agree with this sentence, probably. You know, Sarah, do you want to add up something?
Sure. I mean, to speak to what we were speaking about, that it's what I said earlier, that we all live in patriarchy. Women are part of patriarchy too. And just to speak to the competitive thing, that, if you are in any of these groups that feels disempowered, it's very easy. It's a very common psychological response to feel like, well, there can only be one, especially if you start. It's why, Kate, why you said so few female artists or women artists are hesitant to identify themselves as women artists, because it's like, oh no, I'm putting myself in this box and it's way more competitive, and but it's ultimately just sort of a false way of thinking. Again, it's then you are building a cage around yourself when you think that way, and when you think that the other women are your competition, that it's really like, that we really should. There's a anecdote about like lobsters, that if you put male lobsters in a pot, they'll like build a chain and they'll escape the boiling water. But female lobsters in a pot, they sense that, oh no, the end is near, and they hold each other down, so they all die. And whether or not that's actually scientifically true, I do not know, but I've heard that offered up as a metaphor for what we're talking about here. This feeling of, well, if I'm screwed, you're all screwed with me. And we really, that's on us. That's on us to come up over that way of thinking. To speak to this question that came in through the platform about collectors, this is something right now, crypto art is experiencing such a huge surge in interest, such a huge surge in the prices being paid for work. And Angie, you touched on this, of like the type of work we're seeing selling repeatedly for these high amounts, of being just a very certain style. Across the board, we are only going to see this space take off the way we all want it to, is if we get a greater diversity of collectors. We need a greater diversity of collectors with a greater diversity of taste, with a greater diversity of their own identity. So yes, I think that part of this is, it is actually simple, that we do not have female collectors who are spending the amounts that these whales are spending. I personally can't, no one comes to mind for me that I would consider a whale who identifies openly as female. Some of them may be, some of them are anonymous, so we don't know. But I think that's a greater question for all of us. It affects all of us in this space. I've seen artists of every walk of life have that same sort of gripe of like, my work doesn't fit that model of what is currently really hot. And I know my work is great, and why isn't it achieving those prices? And I would say to them, whether they're a woman, whether they're a man, whatever, however they view themselves, that it's as simple as, don't let the fact that this limited amount of collectors who are defining the space right now discourage you from the potential that we have in the future moving forward. And it's on all of us. I catch myself sometimes, I don't want to sound like I'm shilling a pyramid scheme or something when I'm telling people about crypto art, but it's really on all of us to just, in the ways that we can, expand this space. We all rise together here, all of us. And it's on us to encourage a diverse group of people to enter this space as collectors and as artists. And that's the only way we're ever going to sort of break out of this maybe bit of moment of redundancy that we're in.
Yeah.
The other thing is, instead of sort of wanting people to fit this system that we've built, maybe we need to change the system to fit the people. So in order to redress the balance, maybe we need to look at the existing system and think, well, it favors competitive people. It favors people who feel really competitive and love that adrenaline rush of being competitive. And most men are programmed to be that. Whereas I hate competition. I don't thrive in competition. I like to feel calm and have a calm environment around me when I'm creative. And the current system doesn't really reward that. It rewards this competitive it is a competitive system. So maybe we need to look at dada art and other systems that are being looked at in which to kind of push crypto art towards.
Perfect. With this positive message, I would like to, I have to wrap things up. But we can, we've been suggested to continue our conversation on Authentify after the talk. So everyone who has still a question, they can raise it directly to you, Sarah, or to you, Angie, or to myself. And I would like to thank you very much for this very interesting conversation. And we have many, many other things to still discuss. And I hope we can continue in our next talk once we're invited, once we unite. Thank you, girls.
Thank you so much.